then he would quote a line from the song, then he would give the teaching, then he would sing the song. So we'll find many of these songs, if we'll do tomorrow, so he'll start by saying doob dao, something like that, and then he'll go back, and the song would impress on everybody's mind the teaching that he was giving, and he would go into ecstasy sometimes and everything. And he had some songs that were favorite songs. This one particular song is one that Thakur didn't hear till much later. First of all, it's Urdu. It's Hindustani or Urdu, something like that. It's not a Bengali song. And Sri Ramakrishna probably didn't know about it, wasn't familiar with it. He knew all of these Ram Prasad songs, Kamalakanta songs. And he had such a tremendous memory that somehow he memorized all of these things. Yes, not by reading, but by hearing them a few times. But this one particular song, when we go through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we don't find any mention of this until page 794. Now there are over 1,000 pages in the English translation of the Gospel. So this is quite late, and this was at the house of Ram Chandra Datta. Everybody knows who was Ram Chandra Datta? Kankargachi Ashram. That was the garden house that he had built during Thakur's lifetime. And before that, he and Surendra, both of them, they had their house in the city, and then both of them, first Ram and then Surendra, they built these country homes, garden homes they called them, Kankargachi, both within walking distance of each other. He was Swamiji's some type of uncle, cousin or something.
Somebody's cousin.
Yeah. So their relationship is interesting because they would butt heads a little bit sometimes.
I think he met his Thakur there first time. He's ours.
At Surendra's house.
Surendra.
Yes. Because Swamiji Narendra was known to be a good singer, and Surendra had invited Thakur there. So on various occasions like that, they would call Narendra to come to sing. So Thakur heard him sing. That wasn't so notable at that time. Do we need this? Everybody can hear me, huh?
Yes.
Yes. Not too much happened on that occasion, but Thakur took note of him and liked him, and they said, "Come see me in Dakshina." So otherwise, there wasn't too much that took place. So anyhow, this first time was in Ram's house. This is June 13, 1885. So this is quite late. That Thakur was firstly complaining of his throat, which became a cancer, in April of 1885. So this is just after that. And we find this song mentioned three times. And at this time, Thakur was complaining that his throat was sore. Can you get ice for me? And this and that. And everything. Yeah, and then we know that eventually became the throat cancer. So on this occasion, Sri Ramakrishna was talking to the devotees. After some time, Trailokyaнаth Sanyal and Joy Gopal Sen arrived. They were both members of the Brahmo Samaj. Now this Trailokya, he was before Tagore, before Rabindranath Tagore started writing all the songs, he was the main songwriter. And he had a very nice singing voice, and Thakur was very, very fond of him. And this is the time when Sri Ramakrishna heard the song for the first time. Now, if we go through the Bengali version, Kathamrita, we'll find that he'll give the full version of the song the first time it's sung, and then after that he'll give the first few lines, something like that. In the case of this, we don't get the full song till later, that we get the first few lines, which to me indicates that M was also not familiar with this song, probably heard it for the first time. And this we find was part of the Brahmo Samaj song book. This is why Trailokyaнаth, he sang it, he knew it, and Swamiji Narendra probably learned it at the Brahma Samaj, because all of the songs that Thakur sang were Bengali songs. There may have been a few exceptions, I'm trying to think. But in general, this isn't the type of song that Thakur himself would know. But Thakur could understand. He could follow in Hindi, he could follow Sanskrit. Yeah. He used to say, when these pundits came and spoke in Sanskrit, he could understand. He couldn't speak in Sanskrit, but he could follow everything. So, this is the song that was sung the first time. It's, we can say it's a Sufi song or Sufi tradition, very similar to the Baal tradition, with this idea of no distinction between Hindu and Muslim. This is a very common theme. It goes all the way back to Kabir, in the earlier, perhaps, in Guru Nanak. There was a strong tradition in the early days. This Guru Nanak had equal regard for Islam and Hinduism. And Kabir, we know the story of the Weaver community. Most of the Weavers in Benares were Muslim. Even today, I believe, the Muslim community. Even, our Amjad, they're from Jarnabaki, they were all part of this Weaver community. And this Amjad, this is a little aside from the point, but we think this Amjad was just an ordinary thief. That quick. He wasn't. He was a very nice, good person. But their business was these mulberry trees, which was used to make silk. Silkworms came and for silk for the textile business and everything. And the British burned down all of these mulberry trees. They had no way to make money. So many of them became dacoits. That's the story behind that. But in any case, this is a type of tradition that we have, Sufi tradition. This author, Zafar, he probably the Zafar, he was the last.
Bahadur Shah Zafar.
He was the last Mughal emperor, and we know that Akbar, that he really tried to found his own religion, above and beyond Islam. So a part of that same tradition, there's a very liberal type of Sufi tradition. We were watching today a little bit of this movie about Lalan Fakir. Do you know about this Lalan Fakir? Yeah. It was very interesting. And one of the songs was Pani upar zol na zol upar pani. Kali upar ali na ali upar kali. So this idea, which is greater. So when Thakur talks about, they go to the pond, one says calls it pani, one calls it jug, but the same water. These are old ideas and part of the Baal tradition, and this Lalan Fakir, equally Muslim, equally Hindu. Yeah, so it's very interesting that we have this type of tradition. Anyhow, so the first entry in the gospel that M gives is just the first few lines. Then, second time we hear this song is October 24th, 1885. Now Narendra sings it. So the first time is by Trailokinath Sanyal. And the second time, so Narendra, he must have learned it as a Brahmo Samaj. Not that he was still going at that point. This is a little bit late, but he would have had their songbook. He was a member of the choir and everything. And he sang at the request of Sri Ramakrishna. Now, this became, we can say really, Sri Ramakrishna's favorite song. We may say all of these Ram Prasad songs and everything, but we know that after this particular date, whenever Narendra would sing, then Sri Ramakrishna would say to him, sing that one. Without mentioning the name or anything, like, sing that one. And Narendra, Swamiji, he knew, so he would sing this song. And Thakur loved it because this was really that mood that he lived in. All that exists are thou, he saw God everywhere. Everything is a Divine Mother. This is a beautiful blend of Advaita Vedanta, seeing that one of reality everywhere, and a devotional attitude. That everything is thou, is mother, 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 and for them everything is the beloved. This is that kind of Sufi attitude that we have. Then April 22nd, 1886, this is in Kashipur, that N gives the entire song for the first time. So this is, as I say, unusual. And each time he goes into some type of ecstatic mood. So he was very fond of the song. And it says that on the first occasion, and other times he was overwhelmed with emotion. Again and again he sang. He said, "Ah, thou art all, thou art all." So I'll give the English translation. This is Swami Atmajnananda's translation. Tujse humne, lagaya, jo kuch hai. I've joined my heart to thee, all that exists art thou. Thee only have I found, for thou art all that exists. O Lord, beloved of my heart, thou art the home of all, where indeed is the heart in which thou dost not dwell. Thou hast entered every heart, all that exists art thou. So we have two ideas. One, God dwells within all beings, and God has become all beings. So he's both the pillowcase and the pillow, if we want to look at it that way. Not just dwelling within the hearts of everyone, but he's become everyone, and become everything. All that exists art thou, whether sage or fool, whether Hindu or Mussulman. Thou makest them as thou wilt, all that exists art thou. Thy presence is everywhere, whether in heaven or in Kaaba. Before thee all must bow, for thou art all that exists. From earth below to the highest heaven, from heaven to deepest earth, I see thee wherever I look. All that exists art thou. Now, especially in Kashipur, Thakur lived in that realm, that just wherever he looked, he saw everything was manifestation of Mother. Sometimes he would say, I see everything is Chinmay, everything is consciousness itself, or I see Rama and all men and Sita and all women. Something he lived on that ground. So thus, without pondering, I've understood. I have seen it beyond a doubt. I find not a single thing that may be compared to thee. To Zafar, it has been revealed that thou art all that exists. So the Zafar, whatever we know about him in history, we know that he was extremely liberal, very liberal type of attitude. And this was common among the Sufis, common among the Baals also. This Baal movement started, it had different streams and levels to it. Some Sufi traditions are there, and the Baal traditions, we have the Vaishnava tradition, Shakta tradition, all living together, mixing together, nobody caring. Whether they know conception of caste distinction or religious distinction or anything. Very free type of liberal community, outside the pale of society. So very much looked down upon. This, by the way, this movie, Moner Manush, how many people, has anybody seen it? Yeah, really fantastic movie. And we really get a sense of this very liberal tradition. And several of the songs from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, from Kathamrita, were written by this Lavan Fakir. Now, you won't find his name in any of them, but this phrase, Moner Manush, will be there. So we know that this kind of signature phrase for him. His vowels, they cared more for a type of reverence for the Guru than in any other type of worship. So certainly for really the man of my heart, the Moner Manush, that type of idea. So anyhow, we have this really strand of Islam that is very much different from what we think of. Nowadays we think of Islam as very conservative and exclusive, and everything is kafir, either they're heretics and this and that, but at least during that period, it was quite liberal, and we'll all have mention of things like equally sacred to go to Mecca or to go to Kashi. The worship God is Allah, worship God is Brahman, whatever. That this idea of oneness that was prevalent during that particular period, and that we still have great Sufi saints, and the Sufi tradition is quite old. It goes back at least to the 12th century or earlier. Jalaluddin Rumi. He was a great Sufi poet. Hafiz is a great Sufi poet. That Swamiji's father was very fond of this Persian poetry, and even learned, even very educated people in those days used to learn Persian to be able to read, Hindus even, to be able to read some of this type of poetry, considered a sign of a highly educated, literary type of person. So we see this highly spiritual idea, God dwelling equally in all beings, equally in all places. It doesn't matter what religion, everyone's worshiping that same God. So this is something that was so evident in the life of Sri Ramakrishna and in his teachings that when he heard this, it must have just resonated with him. And so he was so happy that Narendra learned this song and would sing it for him. Yeah, I mentioned about Kabir. The life of Kabir is very interesting. So he's 15. So there's a whole period in India, probably from the time of Guru Nanak to all the Tulsidas and all these great saints who wrote poetry, and most of them were very liberal and didn't care about caste distinction and religious distinctions and everything, as opposed to the acharyas who upheld the orthodox traditions. But they, even Chaitanya, he belonged to that, they didn't care much for caste or anything. And this Kabir, from the Muslim weaver community, but he had great reverence for the holy man at this time, this Brahmananda, and approached him many times for initiation. Now, Ramananda was probably a little bit orthodox, and he turned him down. So the story is that this Kabir, he knew that this Ramananda would go for his bath in the Ganga every morning before sunrise. So everything is dark at that time. So he laid out a plan. They go lie flat at the bottom of the steps, and when Ramananda comes down, his foot would touch his body. So this happened. Foot touched his body, and he claimed Ram Ram. Yeah. So this Kabir, and then he said, "You've given me the touch of your holy feet, and you've given me the mantra. And now I'm your disciple." So his life was wonderful. He composed so many songs, and when he passed away, both the Muslim community and the Hindu community fought over his body. Yeah, because the Muslims, they wanted to bury him. Hindus wanted to cremate him. So again, the story goes that while they're arguing over this, they hear the voice of Kabir say, "You raise the shroud." And when they raised it, they found the body wasn't there, some flowers were there in place. So Hindus took half of them and cremated them, Muslims took half and buried them. So anyhow, that's the story of Kabir. And his time. See, this relationship between Hindus and Muslims, it went through different phases and everything. Swamiji says during his time that all the Muslim boys in the neighborhood would come for Durga Puja time and share food with them and everything. And he would go to their house at that time of the Eid and break the fast. So the relationships were much better at one time. Now it's very unfortunate that these communal things have, reached the point where they have. Anyhow, we know in the case of Sri Ramakrishna that he practiced the Sufi tradition of Islam. That he was born Hindu, is Govinda Roy, but somehow he practiced the Sufi tradition. And Sri Ramakrishna, he made it a habit whenever he did any type of spiritual practice that he would follow all of the traditions. So he used to say he would dress the way that they dressed. If he did his Vaishnava sadhana, they had their own particular type of clothes that they wore and everything. And he didn't stay in his room. He wouldn't look at any of the pictures. Didn't go to the Kali temple even during this time of his Islamic sadhana. And practiced the namaz 5 times a day. wanted to take food cooked by a Muslim cook, but the authorities of the temple wouldn't allow it. So he got a Muslim cook to instruct the Hindu. Now what that means, I don't know. Maybe, certainly not with the beef or anything like that. And maybe onions and garlic, or at the most. I don't know, or just whatever difference there is in the cooking style. And then we know within a few days that he had a vision of a holy man with a beard. Then he felt that he had the vision of Muhammad. And this was towards the end of his 12 years in sadhana. And after that, I had that same conviction that this is also a path to God. So he was so liberal in that respect. Even though later in his life, because his body became so sensitive to things that at one point he said he couldn't take food unless cooked by a Brahmin, very pure character and everything. So he went through different phases. Other times he said, yeah, that there was someone, again with the beard, that means Muslim. And he gave me something to eat, some water, and I took it and I relished it. He said. So he went through different phases. Say, for example, touching metal. Towards the end of his life, he said, well, something has come over me, I can't touch metal at all. You have to get these utensils and things out of stone. And so like, other times there was no problem. He wore that amulet, that gold amulet on his arm for so many years. So he went through different phases depending on what state mother kept him in. He went through all of these different types of phases. So anyhow, I wanted to look at a little bit the philosophy behind this, how this fits into Vedanta, this idea, because we're used to straight Advaitins really dismissing this universe. That this is ephemeral, it's all Maya, that's something to be rejected, it's 1880, that the real Brahman is that which is unchanging, and this is Maya, everything's transitory and unchanging. But at the same time, we have Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. We have this in the Upanishads, this idea that everything is indeed Brahman. Now, most of you were there this morning, and I mentioned this 4 Mahavakyas. This could have been one of them, but Shankaracharya didn't choose this one. Because not that he didn't accept this idea, but it was the emphasis was more on discrimination about everything transitory and changing, and we don't want to get attached to it and everything. So Sri Ramakrishna says this is an 1880, this passive negation, and for Sri Ramakrishna, this was something that he considered to be preliminary. So when we say Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, that this world is false, or this world is, Thakur didn't like to use that terminology. He almost always said anitya. He didn't like this Mithya word. If you go through the Bengali, because the English sometimes they'll translate it as the unreal, world is unreal. Otherwise, I love the translation. Swami Atmajnananda's translation is beautiful, but the one thing that I object to, that Thakur is saying this world is transitory. It's not that, because he very often says, I don't like to call this world unreal like a dream. So his idea was that in order to kind of isolate the real nature of consciousness, Brahman, or the self, and then we have to distinguish. Because right now we confuse the self with everything else, especially with regard to the individual. Now, most of the time when we think about this false superimposition, say we see a rope and we think it's a snake, that we're thinking about external things. If we think about it as the individual, and what we're seeing in ourselves is these false coverings, and we're not seeing the interior. We're not seeing then it's easier for us to understand, I think. Otherwise, think that I'm really seeing consciousness itself, and I'm confusing it with a room with chairs and tables. It's very difficult. If we really try to even imagine that, what does it mean? And we hear it all the time, and Swamiji says it, and this is the truth that the mystics see in their mystic vision. But how do we actually grasp that? What sense does that make to us, that I'm seeing nothing but consciousness, only I'm mistaking it for a physical object? Very good. Now I can say that God dwells within all beings. That we can easily do. But this idea that we're seeing nothing but Brahman is very difficult. Now, with regard to the individual, then we can understand that I've superimposed on Brahman consciousness this idea of personality. This is the ego idea, the mind and the senses and all of that. I'm confused with that. But this ultimate truth of Vedanta, that really there's a divine essence to everything. If we talk about the substance of everything, that there's something divine about it. So we have these two different ways of looking at it. One is on our way to climbing to the roof. So this is Swami Atmajnananda's first negation and affirmation. He talks about this anuloma and viloma. He uses this term anuloma. If you look at the hairs on your hand, they go in one direction. Or if you think of a grain of wood, it'll go in one direction, or even water going upstream and downstream and everything. We have to go in one direction, following things, and then we reverse it. We go back the other way. So vision that we have coming back down is a little different from the vision we have going up in the beginning. Then we have to distinguish everything that's because our concept of reality now is material. It's a material concept. This is real. The table is real. Everything is real. But if we say that this reality has to be one, it has to be unchanging, then we have to eliminate all of these things. And what remains after we eliminate everything is Brahman. Now, as I say, if we do it with this external world, then it's very difficult. But if we do it with ourselves, we peel the onion. We peel first the body, then the senses and the mind and intellect, and we peel everything off. And what we're left with is the pure self. We can experience that. The pure self as pure awareness. Now, when we peel off the onion, then what's inside of the onion when we peel off all the layers? Nothing. Yeah. But it's really emptiness. It's not non-existence. There's a distinction, we can say, if we want the Buddhist distinction, that some schools will say shunyata, that there's nothing there. Now, what Vedanta says is not nothing but pure, something which is empty of any qualities or qualifiers or anything like that. And that's the experience we have, that's the experience of the self. Now, Sri Ramakrishna has this teaching, which was based on his own experience, of course, of Vijnana. So the Vijnani is somebody who first can take that path, that Brahman has to be something that's completely unchanged, something that has no qualities beyond the three gunas and all of that. But then after getting to the roof, he says, coming back down, he sees that everything is a manifestation of that same ultimate reality. So for Sri Ramakrishna, he had different ways of understanding this, that sometimes a very high philosophical point of view, that everything is pure consciousness. So Chinmaya, everything is Chinmaya. Then sometimes he would say everything is the manifestation of Brahman. I see that Brahman has become all of this, highly philosophical. Then other times he'll say, I see all of this as the play of Shakti. Now, if we say that how can Brahman be this? Brahman is unchangeable in everything. Then we have to understand that Sri Ramakrishna never distinguished between Saguna and Nirguna Brahman. One and the same reality. One and the same reality. we have a nice illustration of if we take a woman who gives birth to a child, she's a mother. Now, we make a distinction between the mother and the woman. They're not two different people. And after the woman becomes a mother, she doesn't cease to be a woman. She has to be a woman the whole time. So that potential to be a woman is also present there to be a mother, when she's just a woman. So this is an illustration that's given among the Shaktas, that how Brahman as the divine mother, and Sri Ramakrishna says, before manifestation, we say Brahman. After manifestation, then we can say mother, Mahamaya, Sadguna Brahman, Ishvara, however, but one and the same. They're not two, it's not that Brahman is here and Ishvara is here. Yeah, it's that same reality, only sometimes the manifestation is present and sometimes it's potential form. So this vision of seeing God everywhere and in everything, this is something that Sri Ramakrishna says comes after the highest type of realization, and this is the vision of the mystics. This goes beyond really our ability to understand these things intellectually, and the mind has to be raised to a higher level to understand these things. Otherwise, intellectually, as I say, how to understand that Swamiji says you've been seeing God and nothing but God your whole life, but don't know it. That's very difficult. Now, if somebody says that you've been seeing God dwelling in all beings your whole life and haven't realized it, then I can say yes. I can say that's true because I know that consciousness is within me, also within you. That I can understand. That's easy to understand. But this other type of vision, that we're seeing nothing but God somehow in this manifest form, that is a very, very difficult thing. But we see that this is this direct experience of the mystics. The Zafar, I don't know much about him, but he must have been a really highly evolved soul to be able to write something like that, to have that type of vision. So I'm going to read a little bit from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. He says, in the beginning, when one reasons following the Vedanta method of not this, he realized that Brahman is not the living beings, not the universe, not the 24 cosmic principles. This is what he calls jnana, the highest type, but not yet big jnana. All these things become like dreams to him. Swapnava. Now, this idea that this world is unreal like a dream is something that the jnanis like. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he said many times, I don't call this world unreal like a dream. He doesn't say it's false. This is not a question of true or false, a question of attitude. It didn't appeal to him. He liked this other attitude. This is all the Aishwarya. This is all the glory of the Divine Mother, manifestation. Anyhow, so this is on the way up. All these things become like dreams to him. Then comes the affirmation of what has been denied, and he feels that God himself has become the universe and all living beings. Then, first of all, following the method of neti, he is not the five elements, nor the sense organs, nor the mind, nor the intelligence, nor the ego. Now, so this is from our ordinary point of view, where we accept that this is a physical chair and everything, and it can't be Brahman. It is made up of the three gunas and everything. We accept that. He is beyond all these cosmic principles. You want to climb to the roof, then you must eliminate and leave behind all the steps one by one. The steps are by no means the roof, but after reaching the roof, you find that the steps are made of the same material, brick, lime, and brick dust, as the roof. It is the Supreme Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings and the 24 cosmic principles. So the first is what Thakur calls jnana, and the second is what Thakur calls vijnana, the vision of God in all things. And as I say, both, it has these two aspects. The vision of God in all things, but the vision that everything is God. Everything is a manifestation. So if we think of the illustration, think of a dream, for example. In a dream, all of the objects in the dream are nothing but a manifestation of the consciousness of the dreamer. But the consciousness of the actor within the dream is not a projection of the mind, it's not a manifestation, it is the dreamer. There's a subtle distinction, huh? Because when we wake up from a dream, we may say, I dreamt of all the objects in the dream. But we won't say, I dreamt of this character there who was in the dream. No, that was me. The same I. It's not a projection, it's not a manifestation, it's not a creation. The same I. I dreamt that I did this and that in the dream. The same I. But everything else is a type of projection. Within the dream belongs to kind of, we can say, the Shakti or cosmic mind, something like that. But the real I is one and the same. If we have a dream, do we see things in a dream?
Not really.
Yeah, who is the one who sees things in the dream?
Mind.
Yeah. See, now we're making a distinction between the character in the dream and the dreamer and the sleeper. We're making a distinction now. If we wake up from the dream and we say in the dream, I saw this and that. Now, if we think that the dreamer, the character, the actor in the dream, so then we have to accept the reality of the object in the dream. And to say that the character in the dream, the actor in the dream, has actual senses, and that the light came and bounced off, went to the sense, went to the mind, all of that. But after waking up from the dream, then we realize that I experienced everything in the dream, not because the actor actually saw those things, but because I dreamt them.
Mm-hmm.
The same I, that is that actor in the dream, then we realize that that had no separate existence from this realized. This is the Advaita Vedanta. Now, how we explain the objects in the dream for Shankaracharya, it's secondary. Just don't get confused with all of that. Understand that I'm one with the dreamer. For Sri Ramakrishna, this is also the manifestation of the divine consciousness. A manifestation, but the I is not a manifestation. I am that. So that's that real type of oneness that we have. So this illustration of getting to the roof, then he says, Jnana is the realization of the self through the process of neti, not this, not this. Now we're saying realization of the self, because this is the same thing, inside and outside. We can say somehow realization that Brahman is the ground of all of existence, but that's also kind of, there's a type of speculation to that. The ground of this universe, we don't have the direct experience of that. What is the ground of the self? When we say that consciousness of Brahman, that I directly experience. I am that. I am that. I can directly experience that. So this is why Sri Ramakrishna always says that you want to know the nature of the sun, then find out the nature of that reflected sun. You turn within, find everything dwelling within. This idea that we look without and try to strip away everything without is very, very difficult. But we find the nature of the self, that pure consciousness, then we can see everything as extension or manifestation or glory, Aishwarya, of that self. So, he says, Jnana is the realization of the self through the process of neti, not this, not this. One goes into samadhi through the process of elimination and realizes the Atman. But vijnana means knowledge with a greater fullness. Now, Thakur's definition or explanation of vijnana goes beyond all philosophical ideas, where you even talk to God and to have this special type of personal relationship. So it's really just completely off the charts if we're talking about just our intellectual understanding of things, and the capacity of the mind to understand these things. These are all his experience. So he says, some have heard of milk, some have seen milk, and some have drunk milk. He who has merely heard of it is ignorant of jnana. He who has seen it is a jnana, but he who has drunk it has vijnana, that is to say, a fuller knowledge of it. After having the vision of God, one talks to him as if he were an intimate relative. This is vijnana. So now we're going way beyond this Vedantic idea, Sarvam Kalvinam Brahma, this Upanishadic idea, that and now even Brahman, the personal aspect of Brahman, becomes tangible and real. And Thakur lived in this realm. The mother spoke to him. It wasn't just his imagination, that he would even say, Mother, that if these things are real, give me some sign, and he would get a sign. These things would, he had no question about these things. Swamiji questioned everything. And then Swamiji was given the vision by Thakur that everything you see is nothing but play of consciousness. And he also dwelled in that realm. Now we go a little bit further, that when we say Brahman alone is real, and the individual self is one. So this is Brahma Satyam. And then the third thing, Brahma Satyam, Jiva Mitya, and Jiva, this is the individual self, Brahma Eva, Na Apara. Jiva Brahma Eva, Na Apara, that the Jiva is nothing but Brahman. So that's the actor, and see, the sleeper will be near Guna Brahman. The sleeper becomes a dreamer, Ishvara. Then projects this universe, enters into it. That universe becomes Virat, is a manifestation. And while the actor is within the dream, and not knowing his oneness with Ishvara or Brahman, then he worships. Based upon then the Ishvara is the creator of the dream. A little bit higher sees that there's no separation between everything taking place within the dream and this cosmic mind of Brahman also. So we see Brahman alone is real, individual soul is one with Brahman, and the universe is a manifestation of the same Brahman. So it's no longer unreal. Sri Ramakrishna makes a tremendous statement that somebody says to him, is the universe then unreal? Now, what kind of answer do we expect for him to give? He says, he says that before the realization of Brahman, this universe is unreal. After the realization of Brahman, exactly the opposite of what our ordinary intellectual mind, the capacity of the mind, will tell us. Because he's looking at it from the opposite point of view. He's saying, as long as we think of this world as apart from Brahman, just as a physical universe, as something real, then it's a misconception. There's some unreality to it. When we know that it's nothing but Brahman, then we can say that it's real. So we hear that Swami Turiyananda, it was a great jnani next to Swamiji himself. He was probably the one most established in his knowledge of Brahman, that on his deathbed he was heard to say, Brahma Satyam, Jagat Satyam. Brahman is real, the world is real. So not this world of external matter and everything, but he saw everything as this play of the divine. So in that sense, it's real divine in nature. So once we accept that idea that there's nothing separate from Brahman, everything is a manifestation, then we can see things in terms of two aspects. And Sri Ramakrishna talks about Nitya and Leela. So the Nitya, this eternal aspect, this is when we're merged in that highest realm. When we come back, then Sri Ramakrishna doesn't talk about it just as the manifestation, but the play of the Divine Mother. So then the Leela comes in. The play of the Divine Mother, and this idea of the personal God comes in. Now, this idea that the jiva and Brahman, so the individual self and the supreme self, there's this oneness there. But this idea that personal God and impersonal absolute are also one and the same. Sri Ramakrishna emphasized that idea, and we find this actually in the Bhagavad Gita, that there are several places in Gita where we would expect to hear the term Brahman, and instead Sri Krishna says me. That means the personal God. I'll give a few examples. That chapter 7, this is Jnana Vijnana. Okay, it's not exactly the same meaning that Thakur uses it, but really knowledge and manifestation. He says, at the end of many births, the jnani realizes, what does he realize? Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. No, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. So he's realizing that God himself, in the personal form, Vasudeva means Krishna himself, son of Vasudeva. Vasudeva is Krishna. That means as the Ishwar, personal God, somehow has become all this. Is all of this. That's the realization of the highest type of realization. At the end of the verse, one realizes Vasudeva Sarvamiti. He could have said Brahman Sarvamiti, but it said Vasudeva. Then, in chapter 13, with this idea of Kshetra, Kshetrajna, the field and the knower of the field, that Sri Krishna is talking about. The Kshetrajna is the knower of the field. Now, philosophically, this will be the witness. This will be that pure consciousness, this manifesting within as the impersonal witness. But when he says that who is this Kshetrajna, he says, know me to be that Kshetrajna, dwelling within all Kshetras, within all bodies. Know that to be me. So the same pure consciousness that is the witness is also the personal God. So this is the second type of thing. There are also other examples. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam, who dwells within the heart of all personal God. Now we can say that the witness, or we can say that the Brahman, pure consciousness within, but also personal God. So now we start to get this idea that Thakur emphasizes so much, that this impersonal reality, personal God are also one and the same. So that means if we see everything as a manifestation of divinity, we can see it as all display of Brahman, this Leela of the Divine Mother. We can see it as manifestation, even body of God. We can see it that way, all different ways of understanding it. We have this idea, Chidghana. This is also a very interesting concept, Chidghana. It means that consciousness almost kind of congeals itself into a visible form. If we think of, say, the nighttime sky, the atmosphere, it'll be air molecules and everything, but there'll be some moisture. Now there'll be some places where the moisture kind of coagulates and comes together and forms a visible cloud, but it's nothing but the sky. There's nothing that you can hold on to. There's nothing like that, but it gives that appearance. So that way, Thakur saw the whole universe. It gives the appearance of something, but it's really consciousness. Chidghana. Something like Chinmaya, but more wispy.
Condensed?
Yeah, Chidghana. This almost like thickened milk or something. It just gets condensed together, so it's something visible. But still, there's nothing of any, real substance, tangible to it. So kind of suspended, everything suspended in pure consciousness. The Thakur's vision. Everything just kind of upheld. If we think of this vast space as Akasha, this Swamiji talks about this Chidakasha as pure consciousness. And all the stars and everything is suspended in that. And we think of clouds suspended in the sky, but also made of the same stuff as the sky. So that type of vision. So, this was a conversation between Sri Ramakrishna and Keshav. Keshav Chandra Singh, the Brahma Samaj leader. When attaining perfect knowledge, one sees only one consciousness everywhere. The same perfect knowledge again makes him realize that the one consciousness has become the universe and its living beings and the 24 cosmic principles. Okay, so this is kind of the Upanishadic point of view, this pure consciousness. Then he's speaking to M, and he says about divine love. Attaining that love, the devotee sees everything full of spirit and consciousness. To him, Krishna is consciousness, and the sacred abode is consciousness. Chinmay Sham, Chinmay Dham. The devotee too is consciousness. Everything is consciousness. So we'll see all the different levels that Thakur talks about. That other times he'll talk about the Divine Mother becoming everything, or Ishvara, personal God. And this became more evident during the Kashipur period, to the very end of his life, that he just had that vision that everything he saw was just this play of consciousness, and at the same time, God dwelling within all beings. This was one of the last entries that we find in the Gospel, that Thakur was talking to him. Do you know what I see right now? I see that it is God himself who has become all this. So sometimes Thakur would just Ishwar. Is it nice to look at the language? Sometimes Mother, sometimes Brahman, sometimes the Ishwar. It seems to me that men and other living beings are made of leather, and that it is God himself who, dwelling inside these leather cases, moves the hands, the feet, the heads. So now it's that God dwelling within. So these are separate things, but not separate things. Everything in play of the divine, but the direct vision of God as the individual, the jiva. I had a similar vision once before, when I saw houses, gardens, roads, men, cattle, all made of one substance. It was as if they were all made of wax. So Thakur gives that illustration many times, that look, just as people see artificial fruit, we see apples and bananas and pears, and we see all of those things, but if we know what it is, then we know that what we're seeing is wax. We're seeing one substance, that behind the name and form, there's only one thing. Then, there's one of these very dramatic statements that Thakur makes. I see that it is God himself who has become the block, the executioner, and the victim for the sacrifice. So, all aspects, he sees the divine, and it's so powerful because he knows that he himself will be exiting, he will also be sacrificing before this. At this, Ramakrishna went into samadhi. When regaining external consciousness, he looked towards Latu. Latu was there. This was in the room in Kashipur. And Thakur said, there's Loto. He used to call him different names. He bends his head, resting it on the palm of his hand. I see that it is God himself who rests his head on his hand. So, two different levels of moods. One, everything is pillowcase, everything is covering, and he sees the reality. Other mood is he sees this play of God everywhere. That even this leather case and all of that is nothing but the divine. So we have this impersonal way, this personal way, and then a very personal way of Divine Mother. This will be, and we see this in the life of Ramprasad also. I don't know if I have it here. There's one beautiful song. Do I have it here? Maybe not. There's a beautiful song where he says that I see Mother has become everything. When I walk around the city, I'm circumambulating when I'm doing pradakshina for Mother. When I lie down, I'm making pranam to Mother. When I sleep, I'm meditating on Mother. You're seeing Mother Kali everywhere. That idea. So now we'll see that very often it would really be personalized. So it's nothing but Divine Mother that he's seeing. after he had the vision of Mother Kali in the Kali temple, that he later explained. The Divine Mother revealed to me in the Kali temple that it was she who had become everything. Now we're getting to this, the song. I see that all that exists art thou. So that means a very personal, intimate relationship with God, that God has become everything. For the Sufis, it was still formless, but it was the beloved. It was somehow, without having to bring in any type of name and form, it was that relationship with the lover to the beloved. She showed me that everything was full of consciousness. The image of Kali was consciousness. The altar was consciousness. The water vessels were consciousness. The door sill was consciousness. All was consciousness. I found everything inside the room soaked, as it were, in bliss, the bliss of God. I saw a wicked man in front of the Kali temple, but in him also I saw the power of the Divine Mother vibrating. That is why I fed a cat with the food that was to be offered to the Divine Mother. And he got in a lot of trouble for that. Yeah, they reported to Matu Mahu and everything. I clearly perceived that all this was the Divine Mother, even the cat. Yeah, then we have that song of Ram Prasad that I mentioned, lying down making prayer to Mother, walking around the city. This was a song that very much appealed to many of the monks of our order. If you read that Swami Atmajnananda's Toward the Goal Supreme, at the very beginning, I think. Anyhow, somewhere there, he gives the whole song. He was also very fond of that song. So wherever we walk around, everything is the body of the Divine Mother somehow. That we lie, every time we lie down, we're making pranam to Mother. These are attitudes, spiritual attitudes, and vision of the mystics. But for us, attitudes. Now, Sri Ramakrishna had both visions. He also had this what we find in Vivek Chudamani and other things, that everything disappears. That everything that is unreal will disappear and only consciousness will remain. This is the state of jnana. That comes before all of this. And he had that when he gives us description of his experience in the Kali temple. This is also beautiful. He said, the buildings with their different parts, the temple and everything else, vanished from my sight, leaving no trace, and in their stead I saw a limitless, infinite, effulgent ocean of consciousness. That's the very highest level. That's the samadhi level. As soon as he comes down a little bit, then he's everything's that manifestation. There's a very famous verse from the Vivek Chudamani, where the disciple has that vision. And he says, oh, where is the universe? Where did it go? Huh? I saw it just a second ago. He said, what a strange thing. It's a very nice verse that we have. Now, one final point, and that is the actual beginning of all of this. That is, Tujse, humne, lagaya. That I join my heart to thee. Before we get to this, all that exists are thou. This is the key to all of this. This relationship between the lover and the beloved. That this is the key. This is that which that devotional mood, which brings us closer and closer and closer, so that the beloved, the lover, and the beloved enter a state of oneness. They experience that oneness, without losing that little bit of separation. If there's absolute oneness, then there's no relationship. There's no room for any type of relationship. That's samadhi state. But just short of that, then this little line of the ego is enough to make us feel the little separation, and we have that relationship again. So this is that key. I've joined my heart to thee, and this all goes back to this sense of I. And Sri Ramakrishna, his understanding of ego was very interesting. That it's the main obstacle in spiritual life, and it's the greatest help in spiritual life. So he says that there's no substance to it. That we analyze this ego, we find that nothing remains. It's like sometimes when he talks about peeling the onion, he's saying try to find this ego. He's not saying try to find the self. He's trying to find it, peel it off, you'll find that there's nothing there. But then he says you can analyze 1,000 times, the center of I will always bang. Analyze 1,000 times, you can get rid of this ego, we know there's no substance to it, very next moment it comes back. So he says then utilize it, that the rascal remains the servant of God, trying to God have some type of relationship. So we have to do both things. We have to realize that this lower ego, this very selfish ego, this ego that's full of pride and anger and all of those things, that it's not only the source of all of our problems in life and in spiritual life, but it has no reality to it. That if we try to find that I within, that is the repository of all of these passions, we won't find it. So this is one way of saying that if all of these passions, it's like a hat. If there's no head, there's no place to put the head. We get rid of this idea of I, and there's no room for these passions and everything. But it comes back. Anyhow, Sri Ramakrishna, he emphasizes both things. That this ego is the source of all of our problems. He tells the story of we know the story of the cow. That always saying, hamba, hamba, yeah, I, and it goes to the wall until finally it becomes the Carter's string, the two, like that. Now, we had a question from our Aditi earlier about this. Do we have free will? Who is the agent? All of that. I have a way of trying to understand this that helps me. We have a term called alimana. Now, if we say this feeling that I'm the agent of action, there's a type of alimana that we can take it in two ways. One, that this is just a false idea. That really I'm not the agent of action, that God is the agent. It's too hard. But if we take abhimana meaning pride, that we can all do that. Eliminate this prideful feeling I did it. Get rid of that. So when Thakur talks about this, it's really finally the cow, and not that he says I don't exist, but mother, everything is for you. So we get not to get rid of this feeling of self, but feeling of selflessness. Not to get rid of the feeling of agency, which we can't do. We don't feel that we're the ones that are doing things. Yeah.
But if we eliminate the I, are we not eliminating the God also?
If we eliminate I completely, we're eliminating that relationship. We're eliminating that personal God type of idea. But what we're left with is oneness. This is that diving into the ocean, being only one with the ocean. If we want to have that relationship, we sit in the end, or we take the water out and do all of that. But yeah, when this I completely disappears, then the salt doll has melted. Then the salt doll is one with the ocean. Now, we have lost our individuality, we've lost the personal God, but we become one with everything. So Swamiji says, then we know what it means to have individuality. When we know our, but if it's that difficult state, then there's nothing. Then we don't have it, there's no spiritual attitude at that time. There's only oneness. And we're there. So this is another part of what I call the genius of Sri Ramakrishna. That he didn't turn it into a philosophical question. That is this ego sense, is it real or is it unreal? He looks at it from the point of view of a spiritual attitude. So, and he quotes Ram Prasad, this who did that song where he says, "Chini hote chai na ma, chini khete bhalobashi." So he's saying he's not saying that I don't exist, that I'm really one with sugar and everything, or he's not saying that there's no possibility of oneness. That he's saying it's a question of what I like. I like to have a feeling of separation, have a relationship with God. But when the wave subsides, then there's only the ocean. Then where is the personal God? Where is the individual? Or when the sun comes and the block of ice melts, then it's all only oneness at that point. So for Sri Ramakrishna, he liked to keep a little bit of I, and that was the ripe ego, this vijnana, the ego of the vijnani, that ripe ego. But the vijnanis have two types. One is the jnani, and the other is the bhakta. So the ripe ego of Shankaracharya was, well, I am Brahman. The ripe ego for Sri Ramakrishna was, I'm a child of the Divine Mother. So he liked to maintain that, but when he went into Samadhi, it disappeared. And he wasn't like the other dualists will say that there's an eternal relationship. There's no way to get rid of it. Jiva is Jiva and God is God. But for Sri Ramakrishna, that when Divine Mother removes the last trace of ego, then there's only oneness. Then where's the distinction? And we don't have that distinction anymore. So, to get back to this idea of this devotional relationship, that Thakur says, through the path of bhakti, one also realizes oneness. He's very clear on that when we get to the roof, no matter if we follow a devotional path or a philosophical path, it doesn't matter. And this comes through the devotee offering himself fully to the beloved, to have that perfect self-abnegation, the lover the mind is so filled with the beloved that the lover completely forgets about himself or herself. So that way there's no kind of separation. It's not exactly the ideal of the jnani, I am Brahman, but a type of identification with the divine that's so strong that we can say union rather than oneness. There's a big distinction. Oneness means that there aren't two people, and this feeling of the complete absence of separation. I've joined my heart to the complete absence of separation that leads to the seeing the divine everywhere. How Thakur said that through love of Krishna, that the gopis saw Krishna everywhere, from the highly devotional point of view. So this is something that was common among these Sufi poets. And I just want to, I'll finish with a couple of things that Swamiji said. He gave a lecture in Madras entitled The Work Before Us. And he said there was an ancient Persian Sufi poet. We don't know who, he just said that. And one of the poems says, I came to the beloved and beheld the door was closed. I knocked at the door and from inside a voice came. Who is there? I replied, I am. The door did not open. A second time I came and knocked at the door and the same voice asked, who is there? It is I. The door did not open. And the same voice asked, who is there? I am thyself, my love. And the door opened. And then, in Thousand Island Park, when we have all of his recorded talks there as inspired talks, again he quotes from a Persian, a Sufi poem. There was a time when I was a woman and he was a man. Still love grew until there was neither he nor I. Only I remember faintly there was a time when there were two, but love came between and made them one. So when this sense of I, of the lover, becomes so strong, then the sense of separation disappears, and one sees the face of the beloved everywhere. This is a devotional way of trying to understand that, and this is really what we get in that song, the Zafar song, that I join my heart to thee, all that exists are thou. I see God everywhere. Wherever I look, I see the face of the beloved. And this was Sri Ramakrishna's attitude. That it wasn't a philosophical theory with him. There was a direct experience and highly devotional. It was colored by devotion. For Shankaracharya, he lived in that same realm, that everything was Brahman, consciousness, and everything. It was colored with this devotion and love to the Divine Mother. So he saw Mother everywhere. So I think this is why he loved this song so much, because philosophically it has this beautiful idea of absolute oneness, and yet everything put it in terms of devotion.